not the expert I had in mind. Let's get you connected to the grid and see what happens. Denmark is super well known for the sustainability topics, decarbonization and stuff like that. So how would you describe Denmark, and what's the current scenario, and what's the future in terms of maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
So a decade from now. I attended a career day at DTU, Technical University of Denmark, located just north of Copenhagen. It's widely recognized as a global powerhouse in engineering, ranked among the world's top institutions for wind energy and sustainable systems. During the event, I had the chance to talk with several people from various companies, as most of the stands were focused on energy sector. Among the many professionals I met, I eventually managed to arrange an interview with a renewable energy engineer and consultant. He's originally from Greece, but he chose to move to Denmark back in 2016.
Even if I wanted to just stay and pursue that, the university opportunities in terms of doing another master's or trying another specialization, even a PhD or anything like that, were very limited. And that drove me into basically researching myself, right? Okay, but where can I do this? You know, like where can I expand my knowledge into renewables? And Denmark was basically the very first place. But also its universities being led by the Denmark's philosophy and direction towards sustainability. They had a very good reputation also in, I would say, global standards, more so with European standards, but also global standards, that they had very good programs and so on. Denmark has always had this position globally because they were the first ones, or among the first ones, to invest into incorporating new technologies in energy generation, from back in the day with the wind farms and the offshore wind farms in specific that made Denmark famous, and some of the companies of Denmark famous. One statistic that is very representative is like already Denmark has achieved over 80% of its energy share to be renewables.
But this didn't happen overnight. The transition in Denmark started more or less 30 years ago. As Peter Jorgensen, vice president at EnergyNet at that time, points out, all the procedures, methodologies, and market frameworks were developed gradually. They gained the necessary experience to find the right solution through decades of trial and error. But the real value today is what he calls leapfrogging. By sharing this Danish expertise globally, other countries don't have to repeat the same mistakes. They can jump straight to the most efficient solutions. Back in 2009, wind farms were generating about 20% of the national energy. At that time, the goal for 2025 was set at 50%. Looking at the data today, they didn't just meet that target, they smashed it. Today, wind and solar power already supply more than 50% of the grid, 54% to be precise. That becomes 63% with solar panels. But the Danish parliament is pushing even further. By 2030, the goal is for the entire electricity system to be completely independent of fossil fuels, which means a total green shift. You've been efficient for now, but don't get too comfortable, because out there, the wind is changing. You started touching a lot of points.
Okay, yes, probably.
Let's
unpack.
Good, very good. So, starting from the very beginning, I would say you decided to pick or choose Denmark in 2016 because probably at that time it could represent like the top option all around the world.
Yeah.
Right now, would you consider the country in the same position?
We need to separate for someone that wants to work in Denmark or study renewables in Denmark. To study renewables, I think that Denmark still holds a very high spot. And it's not me saying so, it's that the universities that offer these in Denmark, they have study programs that are very, very well specialized in energy systems, in wind power. I would say also in solar, even though, I mean, it's not a country that relies on solar.
Yeah, sure.
Even though solar has had quite an impact also on the Danish energy mix past few years. It's very, I would say, cutting edge, the university. So if one would like to study renewable energy technologies, then I would say that Denmark is one of the top places to be. Then working with renewables, that's a different story. Because if you would ask me like a year ago, I would tell you that there are opportunities all over the world, not just in Denmark. Of course, it depends on what part of the renewable energy, let's say, value chain you want to work with. According to what you want, then I could tell you that, okay, maybe Denmark is not the best place to be, but Denmark still has both, let's say, renewable energy technology providers already in the country, such as, I mean, the obvious ones, Vestas and Siemens Gamesa when it comes to wind turbines, and then you have other companies that are trying to establish themselves in around renewables.
Look at this. Everywhere you turn, the landscape is cluttered with these massive white blades. It's not a postcard, it's a giant open-air assembly line. Denmark might be the worst classroom for wind energy, but on the ground, it feels more like a factory that never sleeps. And you can understand the sheer scale of this machinery without looking at the two titans behind it. First one, Vestas, a homegrown Danish giant. It's the world's largest wind turbine manufacturer, holding about 60% of the global market share. They are the backbone of the national industry. And then the second one is Siemens Gamesa. Even though it's a German-Spanish merger, its heart and its technical expertise, it's deeply Danish, thanks to the acquisition of Bones Energy back in the 90s. That's why their global offshore headquarters is still right here in Denmark. Just because we are talking about, the job market, how do you perceive it in terms of what's the ratio, for example, for new hires or fired employers? So how's it going?
In the energy industry?
Yeah.
What I can tell you, because I don't know the statistics by heart or anything like that, but I have a sense of the market, you can say. Denmark in particular has a need of highly educated people that will man these areas that I mentioned before, like, for example, engineers. That's why the universities in Denmark are so open in international students that want to come in Denmark and study with potentially, and then they're giving them incentives to stay in the country, not take the knowledge
and then go
elsewhere, but stay in the country and provide value.
Okay, so do you mean that there is a shortage in the market?
There is a shortage in the market.
Okay.
To my knowledge, there's always been a shortage in the market from, I guess, early 2000s. It has become potentially more prominent because we're talking about very specialized knowledge. You get quite some perks into just coming here and studying, and then all this is also to incentivize you to basically stay afterwards and apply your knowledge into the Danish job market. Engineers and in general, this type of educations have quite nice compensations later in the market. So that's also an incentive for people to stay here. Denmark is a high welfare country for its citizens. So
sure.
This is basically the selling point for people to come here and get education and potentially work as well.
It's not just a rumor. Even the Technical University of Denmark, DTU, raised the red flag. We have scaled up the technology, but we forgot to invest in the people who actually have to build it. The industry will need twice as many skilled workers in just a few years. They have the turbines, but they are running out of the minds needed to keep them turning. Are you a highly educated engineer?
The fact that Denmark is a very service-oriented country means a need for highly educated people. Yeah. So would you say it's a shortage? Yes. I mean, if it was only up to Danes to man up the Danish sectors regarding renewable energies and so on, they wouldn't be able to. That's why they have opened up, right? So still, what I can talk about is engineering unemployment rates, for example. They're quite low.
The numbers the industry is throwing around aren't just low. They are in some way problematic. Let me show you what full employment actually looks like in the land of wind. This is the general unemployment rate in Denmark. In economic terms, it's a saturated market. Companies are struggling to find people for even basic, non-specialized roles. But when you look at the energy, it's below 1.5%. Here, the challenge isn't finding a job. It's companies fighting each other to steal the few technicians left. And if you move to renewables, almost 0.5%. The Danish government estimates it will need 45,000 additional skilled workers by 2030. This isn't just a gap, it's a bottleneck that could paralyze every offshore project in the North Sea. And now look at the brains behind the machines, the engineers. The rate is between 1.2 and 1.8%. According to IDA, the Danish Society of Engineers, a fresh graduate finds a job in less than 3 months. But for wind and renewable engineers, it's barely zero. We are talking about hyper-specialized profiles. Denmark is facing a training crisis. The university simply can't churn out engineers fast enough to keep up with the approval of new energy islands. As you can see, too many turbines and not enough mines.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that, oh, in Denmark we have these offshore wind farms, so you apply, then you go and then you start fixing stuff, or like, exactly. No. That's one type of job, of course. So there's a lot around it. How you arrive from the conceptualization of a project to actually building it and operating it, there's so much work in between for so many different disciplines. Of course, as you say, expectations, right? It's not only the requirement like, okay, do you know what a wind turbine is? Yes, okay, then you're hired.
Okay, yeah.
You know, like you need to have the relevant education. Mm-hmm. Maybe companies could be a little bit more reluctant if that education does not come from Denmark. So like if you study something from your, like let's say you're in Italy and you study wind power engineering, for example, and you're freshly out of university and then you compete with a freshly out of university from Denmark, it could be that Danish educated guy could possibly have a assuming you both the same skill level and so on, right? Could possibly have an edge because he has been taught stuff that are relevant in the market here. So he would know some stuff that are more tailored for how business is done here. So maybe that would give him an edge.
But if you're looking to come to Denmark as a wind turbine maintenance technician, you won't face much of a selection process. The demand is so extreme that the gates are wide open. Well, anyway, companies are somehow forced to import specialized crews from Poland, Spain, or the Baltics because they need hands, and they need them now. It comes with a tricky question.
Yes.
So AI, for example.
Yes.
It's a part of your job?
Let's say currently in the moment, the way we use AI is to improve productivity. So using the commercially available LLMs and everything to improve our productivity. We are working into integrate AI. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I should say that though. To integrating AI also in our services, like especially in our modeling services, to also improve a work that otherwise would take a lot more time to be completed, but with the use of AI that has a lot of shortcuts.
Yeah, I know, he kept it vague, like for corporate reason, I think. But I want to show you exactly what he's talking about. This has nothing to do with his specific company, but it represents a revolution born directly from AI and robotics. Meet Reblade.
To perform a full repair of 2 turbines in one single day.
Normally, repairing a blade at more than 100 meters in the sky is a nightmare. It requires 2 highly specialized rope technicians to climb out of a hatch and dangle in the wind. It's dangerous, slow, and as we have discussed, there is a massive shortage of people willing or able to do it. Reblade changed the game using AI. They developed a drone and robot system that can land with surgical precision on a blade, even in heavy winds. It identifies surface erosion and repairs it on the spot. And the result? A 90% reduction in downtime for maintenance. It's better, safer, and cheaper than sending a human into the North Sea just to check on things. Now, the machine is telling us when it's sick. The drone. In this economy. You're lucky I don't throw you in a landfill right now. Please, shut up. How could you describe the differences in terms of onshore and offshore activities?
Denmark has a pipeline of offshore projects because it has this offshore history, and it started with a lot of offshore wind in the North Sea. I don't know how many years ago, maybe 20, 25, I don't remember exactly how many years it was, that Denmark took the decision of pausing and abandoning the oil activities in the North Sea for decarbonization reasons, and then shifted the offshore activities and retrained the people and everything.
To understand the Danish strategy, you have to understand the battlefield. Onshore means turbines on land. Cheaper, easier to maintain, but limited by space and people's patience. Offshore means going out into the sea. So why the obsession with the ocean? Because that's where the power is. Denmark sits in a geographical goldmine. The North Sea has some of the most consistent and powerful wind currents on Earth. So the goal? Some could say turning the ocean into a massive wind farm. But that farm is definitely not cheap. Going offshore costs twice as much as land turbines and 3 times more than natural gas. Plus, there is a sovereignty issue because 99% of the raw materials needed for this technology come from outside the EU. So they are trading one dependency for another. And the list of hidden costs is long. The impact on marine ecosystems and bird migrations, the constant noise pollution, the nightmare of recycling non-renewable blades, and the fact that we still don't know how to store all this energy when the wind blows too hard. But don't get me wrong, there are reasons to celebrate. On September 15, 2019, for the first time in history, wind energy production exceeded the entire demand of the Danish population. It was a miracle. But it's a miracle with a very high price tag, and the challenges are only just beginning.
Definitely Denmark is one, if not the place to be. Of course, there are other places in the world that you can do that, especially now in Asia, for example, and so on. And then onshore activities, Denmark has also quite some opportunities there because we also do onshore wind. There's a lot of onshore wind if you fly over to both here in the Zealand area, so in the Copenhagen Island or whatever you call it, and also in Jutland in the peninsula. So there are a lot of projects already there. You can see them, and the companies are constantly trying to get land, get projects, and so on.
If you want to understand why Denmark is decades ahead, you have to take a look at this place. Because it's not like a wind farm, you have to consider it like a national laboratory. Here, the landscape is so flat that the wind conditions are perfectly predictable. It's essentially like being at sea, but on solid ground. It's the ultimate stress test. What normally takes 2 years to validate elsewhere takes only 1 year here. It's where the giants of the industry, competitors like Vestas and Siemens Gamesa, actually share the same dirt. And the setup is pretty unique. DTU, the university, runs the center, while the private companies rent the space. Despite being fierce global rivals, they've developed a Danish way of collaborating. If one company needs to shut down the other's turbines to measure clean wind for a specific test, they just agree on a time. So this cooperation is the secret sauce. Without this site, the transition to renewables wouldn't just be slower, it would be significantly more expensive. You're not exactly that interesting, but keep spinning. We need to see if for the next 10 minutes you can survive without blowing a fuse.
The same with solar.
But probably less.
Solar was kind of like incentivized some years ago, and a lot of solar projects were built, and solar energy did see quite an increase in the in the energy mix of Denmark, and it will be also in the future. Now it has like a little bit of a pause, like everything else, I would say, but improvements in energy storage, and I'm touching a completely different topic, but improvements in energy storage that works very nice, plays very nicely with solar, will result in more solar in the future probably being deployed in Denmark, but we already see that trend in other countries. So I would say that it would be weird that Denmark does not follow the same way. Of course, Denmark is not a country like Spain or Italy in terms of sun, but it still makes sense because the solar is so cheap anyways, like the equipment. So even if you don't have a lot, it still will make sense, especially with falling energy storage or battery prices. So you can couple batteries with solar, then
Yeah, okay.
it works very well.
You may be surprised to hear that wind energy has not the most widely used renewable energy source in Denmark. Back then, the path was dirtier, but let's look at the numbers. In 2009, coal-fired plants were the undisputed kings, generating 50% of the country's energy. At the same time, nuclear, which Denmark eventually moved away from, supplied about 8%. And this brings us to a critical part of the narrative, the backup issue. People thought you cannot rely on the wind alone. When the wind doesn't blow, the grid needs a safety net, usually fossil fuels or nuclear, to prevent a total blackout. This dependency was the elephant in the room of the green transition. Back in 2009, the Minister for Climate and Energy made a bold claim. She stated that Denmark expected to never build another coal-fired plant.
They're still burning coal, and of course in Denmark, we do not expect ever to build more new coal-fired plants in Denmark. That is not sort of in the cards.
I checked, and she kept her word. Since that interview, no new coal plants have been commissioned in Denmark. Instead, the focus shifted entirely to retrofitting old ones or shutting them down in favor of biomass and offshore wind. Now, the scenario is totally different. 15 years later, these are the percentages of energy sources for Denmark. If I unplug you right now, the Danish economy actually gets stronger. I mean, don't look at me like that. Numbers don't lie, buddy. Regarding, for example, the investments from the government or the European Union, I don't know. Do you think that they are well balanced between onshore and offshore, or it's more to the offshore activities?
I don't have any data to back up.
No, just
what I would
feeling,
say. I think is more. It's gravitated towards offshore.
Okay.
Right now.
Yeah.
And that's the Danish incentives. That's the Danish kind of like push, not necessarily the EU push. The EU is supporting with these decisions, and North Sea being an energy hub, which is basically has its fundamentals in the offshore wind.
Yep. So here is the paradox. Europe infrastructure isn't even ready to absorb this much energy yet. The grid is lagging behind, but that doesn't stop Denmark from effectively controlling the global wind turbine market. From the Baltic Sea in the east to the North Sea in the west, these aren't just wind farms anymore. They are the production plants for the future. There are some future plans or future projects that are still ongoing. For example, new platforms around the North Sea or the Baltic Sea. So new type of hubs, let's say, for the windmills.
There are. And there was also an open call for certain blocks of sea to be rented out for people to want to develop wind projects there. That was some months ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it didn't go so well because the government, so basically no one bidded into these blocks because they could not make their business case work. With the rules that the government had set to bid and so on, and how it would work, and that gave, I think, a very strong message to the government of how basically disconnected was the incentive and the auction with the market right now. So I think they will revise that and eventually redo it again, of course.
Okay, let me give you a very quick summary of what happened, the reason, and what's going on right now. Because for a moment, the Danish wind miracle almost ground to a halt. Between 2022 and 2023, the industry hit a wall. It was called the Open Door Scheme. It allows private developers to propose offshore wind farms wherever they want it. But suddenly, the Danish government pulled the plug on almost everything, 33 gigawatts of potential energy, fearing it violated EU state aid rules. And the result? Billions in investment went up in smoke, and a cloud of total mistrust covered the market. It was a disaster. Now we are in the maxi round phase. To fix the chaos, the government took back control. No more private proposal. Now the state decides when, where, and how to build. They have just launched the largest tender in Danish history. 6 offshore farms at once, totaling 6 gigawatts. They are trying to rescue their 2030 goals after the previous system failed. It's a massive, centralized gamble to win back the investors they scared away. I told you, it's not just about the wind. I mean, if the lawyers don't agree, basically you don't spin. But now, hold on, because we're moving, finally, to the heavy stuff.
It's not just governmental push. I mean, there's also a lot of private companies and private equity that is investing in Denmark in renewable projects. And there are projects in the pipeline from private companies that are pushing there.
Yes, private players are the ones turning these plans into steel and glass. And this is the perfect time to talk about the projects that are actually redefining the map of Europe. First, we have to talk about Kriegers Flak. In 2021, Denmark inaugurated what was then Scandinavia's largest wind farm. It's a beast. 72 turbines with enough capacity to power 600,000 ohms. But its real secret isn't just the size. It's a milestone for global energy because for the first time, an offshore grid connects 2 different countries. Kriegers Flak is linked to the German wind farm Baltic 2. It's a combined grid solution, a hybrid bridge that lets Denmark and Germany trade green energy in real time. So it's not just a farm, it's an international power socket. And then there is the future, Bornholm Energy Island. If Kriegers Flak was a bridge, this is a hub. The plan is to turn the island of Bornholm into the world's first green energy islands by 2033. We're talking about 3 gigawatts of power, enough for 3 million households, connected to both Denmark and Germany via massive HVDC cables. A roadmap is ambitious. The project just received over 600 million euros in EU funding to move into the final construction phase. It's the next level of the Danish model, moving the heart of the grid from the mainland to the middle of the sea. Oh, you wish. Nice try. What's the impact of the daily life of family? So in terms of, the bill that you have to pay for your housing things and stuff like that. So compared to the other solution, it could be gas, it could be whatever else.
Yeah, it doesn't have the effect that you would expect. Like, it's getting cheaper because it's energy for free, right, and so on. Energy market and regulation is still adapting to the nature of renewables, which is intermittency. Renewables is not a stable energy source like fossil energy. So that fact alone is leading to some events in the market that do not have the desired effects in everyday people, in your electricity bill and so on.
Okay.
Does it achieve decarbonization? Yes. Is it more expensive than before? Probably yes. But it's not inherently a problem of the renewables per se, but how the market is solving this intermittency problem and how regulation is solving it. And that is getting actually addressed slowly because regulation cannot really follow technology developments that fast. And energy systems are evolving quite fast.
But being a global leader has a hidden price. Denmark has some of the highest electricity prices in the world. Why? High taxes and heavy dependency on the weather. We have to look back at 2009. Listen to the Minister for Climate and Energy laying the groundwork for one of the world's most aggressive carbon tax systems.
For many years we've had a CO2 tax. Even before Kyoto we had a CO2 tax in Denmark. So when I, back at home, get my electricity bill, I can see the CO2 tax. When I buy fuel for my car, more than half of the price will be taxes. So there is a very huge incentive for me, for my household, for me as a citizen, and for business to save energy.
On the other hand, when the crisis happened with the natural gas from Russia and the war and everything, I mean, I would say that any country with not a lot of renewables, or let's say we speak for Denmark, they will be way worse off if we were only dependent on Russian gas. So the effect of high electricity prices will be more pronounced, if not for offshore wind and so on. So, yeah.
We pay a little extra to have all our electricity come from renewable resources.
Annually. Do you see some sort of saving?
Depends on the weather. We use electricity to heat the house as well, but we have a quite efficient system. But in cold winters, we'll spend more than in warmer winters. But I think we try to lower the energy usage, and we try to see what kind of things we can do to help minimize emissions.
The carbon tax isn't just a new concept here. Denmark pioneered it back in 1992. But for more than a decade, it was a soft tax. Between 2010 and 2022, companies paid around 24 euros per ton of CO2. It was enough to push families toward electric heating, but too low to actually force heavy industry to change. But that changed in 2024. The green tax reform turned Denmark into the most expensive place in Europe to pollute. By 2025, that price doubles to 50 euros, and by 2030, it's projected to skyrocket to 150 euros per ton. Yes, it's a brutal financial squeeze. The government is even going after agriculture. In 2030, Denmark will be the first country to tax methane emissions from livestock. Yes, a tax on cows. The plan is simple. Companies pay to pollute, and the state uses those billions to fund carbon capture technologies. And by the way, I investigated a lot on these things during the month that I spent in Oslo and Stavanger. But this is a future story for a future video. So the side effect is real. Costs are passed to consumers, and heavy industry like cement are starting to look at the border, wondering if it's time to leave. Not yet, but if you start smelling like a cow, trust me, you won't be able to afford it. There are some controversial things or some comments, thoughts about people that, I don't know, for whatever reason, don't want to pursue this type of source of energy.
The only exposure that I have to that
Yeah.
is certain people's voices are a bit more loud in the media after Trump's administration got in power. And that was basically a global shift. So yes, people are getting more skeptic about renewable energies, but it doesn't have to do. It doesn't inherently have to do with the nature of the technology or anything, but rather than the effect that it has on the market, on the prices. And then you can tie it with other, let's say, movements such as like people that do not really believe in the climate change and so on and so forth. So that's why they're opposed. Like, why should we put up wind turbines and so on? They're ugly or this and that. Society, they're pretty welcoming, and they're educated up to a certain point to know that this is something that is good for the society, and that's reflected also in the governments that are being elected here. And how do they push? Like every, how's it called? Almost every party here in the Danish parliament has a strategy for sustainability from far right to left.
Got it.
The other way around.
But taxes and bureaucracy are only the problems you perceive if you don't care about digging below the surface. Because when you look closer, the green dream starts to show some deep cracks. We are industrializing the oceans. The noise from the foundation disrupts the sonar of marine life. And for migratory birds, these farms are a deadly wall. The dream is to use AI to make turbines autonomous like robots, smart enough to stop when a flock of birds approaches or when rain causes too much corrosion. But we aren't there yet. And then there is a noise.
People don't like a wind turbine in their backyard.
Why not?
They are noisy, as you can hear.
General opinion is nobody wants them too close to their houses. It's one of the dilemmas of renewable energy. Is that usually it's the areas with few people who will have to suffer because they will have the windmills or the solar panels, and it's sometimes it's the places with a lot of people that will benefit. But I know from other projects that it's a practice to either buy the houses or give some compensation to people if there's a lot of noise, for instance.
And the noise you have here by yourself, there's no noise about it.
The blades make the sweet, gentle sound of money.
And the biggest irony? These machines are built to last 20 years, but some fail after just 6 or 7 due to extreme corrosion. And while the tower is recyclable, the blades are not. They are made of composite materials that are almost impossible to destroy.
The big wind turbine junkyard.
They're just lying around.
There's nothing much renewable about these things.
And that's really been the problem here. We've got these huge wind turbine blades, but we've got difficult to recycle materials because they're all combined.
Right now, we are literally burying them in giant landfills. Siemens Gamesa is testing recyclable blades, but they are expensive and still won't produce new turbines. So basically, we're generating renewable energy with non-renewable waste. You know, your brothers in the North Sea are being buried alive right now. Oh no, not a chance. You're just a future fossil. There is anything else that you have in your mind and you would like to highlight and wasn't covered during this type of chat, just because you are like an insider of the...
What I would say is that to newcomers is do not be discouraged by things that they're in the media that, you know, like you could see that in the past couple of years, or like past year actually, there are some worldwide, some renewable projects, like big ones that they got cancelled, delayed, and so on and so forth, which clearly shows like a correction in the renewable energy market in general. But that's due to political events and is not a hype train just crashing. So it's a market correction. It's a slowdown, but not a stop. Definitely not a stop, I would say. Of course, not when you have countries like China heavily investing still in that for energy security reasons as well. I mean, energy security is a big thing in Europe already now, and since we don't have fossils to be like, okay, we are a fossil country and we are exporting oils and all that. So what we have is good winds, is sun, is interconnected energy markets and so on. So if they want to pursue a career or an education in renewables,
so keep continuing testing the process.
Yes, and don't be afraid also to look at specific specializations within the renewable energy, because the industry does not know yet what is the next silver bullet for the problem that is called energy demand expansion and energy security in the country. So it's like anything is still in the game, even nuclear. I mean, nuclear is also in the game, and you can see also like countries like Denmark has kind of like opened up more now the discussions.
Now it's forbidden, for example, here.
What I know is that there was a suggestion in the parliament recently to reopen discussions and so on already.
The main discussion we probably had in the 70s or earlier, but where they discussed whether we should have nuclear energy in Denmark. And back then decided that we shouldn't. And now with the new energy or the new focus on sustainability, some people promote nuclear energy as a way of a green, be able to be self-reliant with green energy. I don't know what is going to happen in Denmark, but so far I can't remember seeing a political discussion whether we should have it. It's more younger people or youth parties. But I have no idea whether it's 5% or 10% or 50% who will vote for it.
The acceleration of the energy islands is so extreme that we are essentially flying blind into a storm. Experts warning us, we still don't know how to integrate these massive hubs into the rest of our energy system. And wind turbine isn't just a fun anymore. It's a high-tech plant that must survive the extreme physics of the North Sea. We don't fully understand how hundreds of these giants will interact with ocean currents and waves when packed together. The risk? If we get it wrong, we'll either build them too strong and waste billions, or too weak, leading to a maintenance nightmare. And this makes me wonder, once this project starts, is there even a way to go back? When you are spending billions, do you adopt the science to justify the investment, or do you have the courage to admit it if a direction taken was wrong? Denmark is chasing a future that hasn't been fully tested yet. It's a race against time, but in the North Sea. If the physics don't align with the politics, the grid won't just fail. It will collapse.
I really hope that I could give some insights.
No, definitely. I mean,
according to my experience, it doesn't have to be the way that things are, and maybe someone will, I don't know if you post this on YouTube, will tell you in the comments, this guy does not have any idea what he's talking about, and this and this. Okay, it's fine. You have another opinion?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.